You thought getting to Hogwarts would be the easy part. You were wrong. You imagined a beautiful train, warm lights, friendly students, snow-covered mountains sliding past the windows, maybe even a little music playing somewhere in the distance. You were wrong. Because the journey to Hogwarts was never simply a trip. It was a test. And the moment you stepped onto the platform, you had no idea how many things could go wrong before you ever reached the castle. It began on a cold September morning. You stood alone inside a crowded station, holding a strange red-brown suitcase that felt heavier than it should have. Your ticket was folded inside your coat. You had checked it 12 times. Platform 9 3/4. The words still looked ridiculous. There was no such platform, at least not according to the station signs. People rushed around you carrying coffee, newspapers, backpacks, and luggage. Nobody seemed to notice the nervous child standing beside a stone pillar, staring at an ordinary brick wall. You looked at the ticket again, then at the wall, then back at the ticket. Your heart began beating faster. A family suddenly appeared beside you. They were dressed strangely. Their luggage was covered in scratches, their clothes were old-fashioned, and a small silver cage containing a black feathered bird hung from the father's hand. The youngest girl whispered something to her mother. The mother smiled. Then the entire family walked directly toward the wall. You froze. They did not stop. They disappeared, not around it, not through a doorway, into it. You swallowed. This was your first mistake. You followed. Your suitcase struck the ground as you ran. 3 steps, 2, 1, you closed your eyes and crashed through. For half a second there was nothing. Then, whoosh! Cold air struck your face. You opened your eyes. The ordinary station was gone. A massive scarlet train stood before you, breathing clouds of white steam into the air. Above it, a brass sign glowed beneath the platform lamps. Students crowded the platform. Owls screeched. Trunks rolled across the ground by themselves. Parents hugged their children. Someone was arguing with a luggage cart. And somewhere beneath all that noise, a deep whistle sounded. You had made it. You had found the platform. But you had not yet realized the real journey was about to begin. First year? You turned. A tall boy with tangled copper-colored hair was staring at you. His name, you would later learn, was Bramblewick Quillane. He pointed at your suitcase. That's going to be trouble. What? The suitcase. You looked down. Why? He leaned closer. Because it's leaking. You stared. A thin stream of purple smoke was escaping from the bottom. You dropped a handle. The suitcase rattled. Then something inside scratched the lid. Once, twice, 3 times. Bramblewick stepped backward. What did you pack? I don't know. That is not an encouraging answer. The suitcase suddenly jumped. You screamed. A nearby owl screamed. Someone dropped a pumpkin. A woman shouted, "Not again!" And then the suitcase stopped. Silence. Bramblewick stared at it. You should probably get that onto the train. Probably? The whistle blew again. This time everyone moved. The platform became chaos. You grabbed your suitcase and rushed toward the train. But there was one problem. The train doors were already closing. You ran. Your shoes slipped against the cold stone. Your suitcase bounced behind you. The purple smoke grew thicker. You reached for the nearest door. It slammed shut. You ran to the next. Closed. Another. Closed. The train began moving. No! You sprinted alongside it. Your lungs burned. The wheels screamed against the rails. Steam swallowed the platform, Then a hand appeared through an open window. Jump! You did. Your fingers caught the edge. For one terrifying second, your feet left the ground. The train pulled you forward. Your suitcase swung beneath you. You heard someone shouting. Then another hand grabbed your wrist. Bramblewick, let go of the case. I can't. Then we both fall. You looked down. The platform was already disappearing beneath you. You made your decision. You pulled yourself upward. The suitcase remained hanging from your other hand. Bramblewick dragged you through the window. You collapsed onto the floor of the carriage. For several seconds, neither of you spoke. Then Bramblewick looked at the suitcase. It was still smoking. He sighed. You really are going to be trouble. You sat up. Outside the window, the station was disappearing. The train was leaving. There was no going back. At first, everything felt wonderful. You walked through the corridors. Every compartment seemed filled with something stranger than the last. Students traded enchanted sweets. A tiny dragon slept inside someone's hat. A group of older students played cards that whispered insults whenever somebody lost. You finally found an empty compartment and sat beside the window. The countryside rolled past. Fields became forests. Forests became hills. And the hills slowly became mountains. For the first time, you relaxed. Maybe Bramblewick had been wrong. Maybe the journey would be easy. Then the train entered a tunnel. The lights flickered once, twice, then went completely black. The train continued forward. Nobody spoke. Now, before we continue, if you're enjoying this journey, tap like, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the bell so you don't miss the next story. You heard the wheels beneath you. Clack, clack, clack. Then boom! The entire carriage shook. Students screamed. Your suitcase flew from the luggage rack. It struck the floor. The lid opened. Purple light poured across the compartment. You stared. Inside the suitcase was not clothing, not books, not school supplies. There was a small ancient compass. Its needle was spinning violently. Bramblewick slowly stood. That wasn't yours, was it? You shook your head. No. The compass stopped. The needle pointed directly toward the front of the train. Then the carriage lights returned. Everyone looked around. Nothing seemed wrong. But outside the window, there was no longer a tunnel. There was no countryside. There was no sky. Only darkness. A darkness so complete that it seemed to press against the glass. Then something appeared outside. A pale shape, running beside the train. You stared at it. It had no face, no eyes, no mouth, only a long shadow-like body keeping pace with the speeding train. You blinked. It vanished. Bramblewick whispered, "Don't look outside." Why? Because if it knows you can see it. He stopped. You waited. What happens? He slowly looked toward the corridor. He gets on. A sound came from the other side of the compartment door. 3 soft knocks. Knock, knock, knock. Nobody moved. The train thundered deeper into the night, and you suddenly understood something terrifying. Knock, knock. You stared at the compartment door. Nobody moved. Bramblewick Quillane had gone completely still. His face had lost its color. The ancient compass inside your suitcase continued to tremble, its needle pointing toward the door. You whispered, "Who is it?" Bramblewick immediately grabbed your sleeve. "Don't." The knocking stopped. For several seconds, there was only the sound of the train. Clack, clack, clack. Then the handle began to turn, slowly. You held your breath. The door opened 2 inches. Cold air slipped into the compartment, then 3 inches. Nothing stood outside. The corridor was empty. Bramblewick released your sleeve. You both stared. Then the train lights flickered again. For a single second, you saw something standing at the far end of the corridor, tall, thin, motionless, watching. The lights came back. It was gone. You looked at Bramblewick. He was already closing the door. Sit down. What was that? I don't know. You clearly know something. He stared at you. My grandmother told me never to look at things that follow trains. That doesn't explain anything. It wasn't supposed to. The train suddenly lurched. You fell against the seat. Your suitcase slid across the floor. The compass spun faster. Then the needle snapped toward the ceiling. A faint whisper came from inside the suitcase. Not words, a breath. You slowly opened the lid. The compass was glowing. Bramblewick leaned over it. What is that thing? I don't know. You said that already. I still don't know. Then a voice came through the corridor. A girl's voice, soft, terrified. Please. You looked at Bramblewick. The voice came again. Please help me. It sounded close, just outside your door. You stood. Bramblewick grabbed your arm. No. But someone needs help. That is exactly what it wants you to think. You pulled away. What if you're wrong? He didn't answer. You opened the door. The corridor was empty, except for a small girl standing near the next compartment. She looked about 11. Her dark hair was tangled. Her school robe was torn. She was barefoot, and she was crying. You stepped toward her. Are you okay? She looked at you. I'm lost. Bramblewick appeared behind you. What is your name? The girl stared at him, then smiled. Not like a child, like someone who had just been waiting. Alawan Vera. The compass inside your suitcase suddenly went silent. The girl looked directly at it. You have the compass. Your stomach tightened. How do you know? She took one step closer. Because it brought you here. Bramblewick pulled you backward. Get inside. Alawan's smile disappeared. The train lights went out. This time, they did not flicker. They died. The entire train became black. Then came the sound. Something running across the roof. Thud, thud, thud. It moved above you, fast, far too fast. Students screamed from nearby compartments. Doors slammed. Someone shouted for a conductor. Then something crashed against the ceiling. Dust fell onto your face. Alawan whispered, "It found us." You looked up. What found us? She didn't answer. The roof groaned. Then a long shadow appeared across the ceiling of the corridor. It moved slowly, as if something enormous was crawling above the train. Bramblewick whispered, "Back inside." You stepped into the compartment. Alawan followed. The door slammed shut. The three of you stood in darkness. Then the train began slowing down. That was impossible. The train had been racing through the night. Now the wheels were screeching. Metal screamed. Everyone was thrown forward. You grabbed the seat. The train stopped. Complete silence. No movement, no engine, no wheels, nothing. You waited. Then came a sound from outside, a bell. One deep note. Dong. Bramblewick looked terrified. What? That bell? He swallowed. It means we're not on the normal route anymore. The compartment door opened by itself. Beyond it was darkness. Not the ordinary darkness of a train corridor. Something deeper. Something that seemed endless. Alawan stepped forward. Come on. Bramblewick shook his head. Absolutely not. She looked at him. If we stay here, it will come inside. What will? She pointed toward the windows. You turned. Every window was covered in black frost. And behind the frost, dozens of pale shapes were moving. Not outside the train, around it, walking, watching, waiting. You felt your stomach drop. Bramblewick grabbed his bag. We're moving. Where? Anywhere that's not here. You followed him into the corridor. Other students were doing the same. The entire train had become a maze of frightened faces. Some students were crying. Others were whispering protective spells. A conductor rushed past carrying a lantern. "Stay inside your compartments." Nobody listened. Then the train moved again. Slowly, almost painfully. The wheels began turning, the lights returned, and the frost vanished from the windows. Everyone breathed again. You looked outside. The landscape had changed. The train was no longer passing through open countryside. It was climbing through a forest. Huge trees surrounded the tracks. Their branches twisted over the train like claws. Moonlight barely reached the ground. Bramblewick looked out. "This isn't on the route," Elowen whispered. "We're being taken somewhere." The compass began moving again. This time the needle pointed toward the rear of the train. You frowned. "Why is it pointing backward?" Bramblewick looked at the compass. Then at the last carriage. His expression changed. "Because whatever we're running from," he paused, "isn't behind us anymore." A scream exploded from the rear carriage. Then another. Then another. The three of you looked at each other. People began running toward the front. You ran with them. The corridor filled with panic. A door slammed open. Someone shouted, "Keep moving!" You pushed forward. Then the train shook. A window shattered. Wind tore through the corridor. Students screamed. Something had landed on the roof again. This time it was above you. You heard claws scraping across metal. Scray! The sound moved directly overhead, then stopped. You looked up. A dark shape descended slowly in front of the glass. Two pale eyes appeared. Bramblewick whispered, "Don't breathe." You tried, you really tried. But fear made your lungs burn. The creature moved closer. Its face pressed against the glass. There were no features, only those pale eyes. Then it whispered your name, not loudly, not angrily, almost lovingly. You froze. It knew you. The ancient compass suddenly burst into light. The creature recoiled. The train thundered forward, and for one brief moment, the darkness outside vanished. You saw mountains, far beyond the forest, black mountains covered in snow, and high above them, hidden behind clouds, stood the silhouette of a castle. You had never seen it before, but somehow, you knew where you were going. The train was taking you toward Hogwarts, but the journey was no longer carrying you there. Something else was riding with you, and it wanted the compass, very badly. The castle disappeared behind the clouds. You barely had time to understand what you had seen before the train plunged deeper into the mountains. The windows rattled, the wheels screamed, and the ancient compass inside your suitcase pulsed with a strange purple light. Bramblewick Quillane stared at it. "It's getting stronger." "Why?" "I think we're getting closer." "Closer to the castle?" He shook his head. "No." That answer frightened you more than anything else. Alawan Vera stood beside the window, watching the darkness outside. "There's a reason the train showed you the castle." "What reason?" She turned. "It wanted you to know where you're going." Bramblewick frowned. "That doesn't make sense." "It doesn't have to." Suddenly, the train lights went red. Every lamp in the corridor changed at once. The students stopped talking. Then the conductor's voice came through the speaker. "Remain seated." A pause. "Do not open the doors." Another pause. "And whatever you hear?" His voice became quieter. "Do not answer." The speaker clicked off. Nobody moved. You slowly sat down. For the next few minutes, nothing happened. Then you heard singing, very faintly, coming from outside. A child's voice, soft and distant. It sang a melody you didn't recognize. Alawan closed her eyes. "You hear it too?" You nodded. "What is it?" "A warning." The singing grew louder. The train entered another tunnel. Darkness swallowed the windows. Then, boom! The entire train jumped. Your suitcase flew into the aisle. Students screamed. The ceiling lights exploded one after another. Glass rained across the floor. The train began tilting. You grabbed the nearest seat. Bramblewick grabbed Elowin. For several terrifying seconds, the train seemed to be falling sideways. Then it slammed back onto the tracks. Silence. Someone began crying. A few seconds later, the conductor shouted from somewhere ahead, "Everyone stay where you are!" Then you heard him scream. The sound traveled through the train and stopped abruptly. Bramblewick looked at you. "We need to move." "Where?" "To the front." "Didn't he just tell us to stay here?" "He also just screamed." That was enough. You ran. The corridor was almost empty. Doors stood open. Luggage was scattered across the floor. One window had cracked from corner to corner. Cold mountain air rushed through it. As you approached the front carriage, you saw the conductor. He was standing perfectly still. His lantern rested on the floor, his back was toward you. "Sir?" He didn't respond. Bramblewick stepped forward, then stopped. The conductor slowly turned around. His eyes were completely black. Elowin grabbed your hand. "Run." You ran. The conductor's head twisted unnaturally toward you. He opened his mouth. No voice came out. Instead, a cloud of black smoke escaped. It spread across the corridor. You slammed the nearest door shut. The smoke struck the glass. The entire window frosted over. Bramblewick shouted, "Keep moving!" You sprinted toward the front of the train, then the floor shook. The train suddenly began climbing. Steeper and steeper, your feet slipped, you grabbed the walls. "What is happening?" Bramblewick shouted over the noise. "The tracks!" "What about them?" "They're disappearing!" You looked through the window. He was right. The railway tracks ahead were vanishing into the darkness. Not breaking, not ending, vanishing. The train was racing toward empty air. Elowin screamed, "We have to get off!" "There's nowhere to get off." Then the train reached the end. For one impossible second, the front of the train left the tracks. The world dropped away. You saw mountains beneath you, a river far below, clouds racing past, and the entire train was flying. The carriages screamed and twisted behind you. Students clung to seats. Luggage floated through the air. You grabbed a metal railing. Your suitcase slammed against the ceiling. The compass burst open. Purple light exploded through the carriage, and something answered. A giant shape rose from the clouds. It looked like a bird, but it was far too large. Its wings stretched across the mountain valley. Lightning flashed behind its body. Bramblewick stared. "What is that?" Elowin whispered. "A storm guardian." The creature struck the train with one enormous wing. The train spun. You screamed. The world became sky, then mountains, then sky again. Your hands nearly slipped. You reached for Bramblewick. He grabbed you. "Don't let go!" The train continued flying through the storm. Then the creature vanished into the clouds. The train dropped. You felt your stomach rise into your throat. Everyone screamed. And then the wheels struck something. Crash! The train landed on a narrow mountain track. The impact threw you across the carriage. You hit the wall. Pain shot through your shoulder. But you were alive. The train continued moving, slowly. Smoke poured from the engine. The windows were shattered. Several carriages had been damaged, but somehow the train was still traveling toward the castle. Bramblewick pulled himself upright. "Everyone alive?" Nobody answered. Then a hand rose from behind a seat. "Mostly." A nervous laugh spread through the carriage. You looked at Elowin. She was staring at the compass. It was pointing straight ahead. The needle wasn't moving. For the first time, it was perfectly still. You whispered, "What does that mean?" Elowin looked toward the window. "We're close." You expected relief. Instead, she looked frightened. "Close to what?" She didn't answer. The train entered a final tunnel. This one was different. Ancient stone surrounded the tracks. Symbols had been carved into the walls. As the train passed them, the symbols began glowing, one, then another, then hundreds. Bramblewick stared through the window. These aren't railway markings. What are they? Warnings. The compass began vibrating again. A crack appeared across its glass. Then another. You reached for it. Alawan shouted, "Don't!" Too late. The compass opened by itself. A beam of purple light shot into the tunnel. Every symbol on the walls illuminated at once. The train stopped, not gradually, instantly. You were thrown forward, then silence. A door opened at the end of the carriage. Beyond it was a narrow stone platform. There was no station, no sign, no lights, only an old lantern hanging from a chain. Its flame was blue. Bramblewick stared. We shouldn't be here. A distant whistle echoed through the tunnel. You looked toward the darkness behind the train. Something was coming, fast. Alawan whispered, "It's following us." Then you heard footsteps. Not one pair, hundreds. Coming through the tunnel. The students began screaming. Bramblewick pointed toward the blue lantern. "Take it." "What?" "The lantern." You grabbed it. The instant your hand touched the handle, the flame turned white. The footsteps stopped. Silence returned. Then a voice echoed from the darkness. "You cannot carry the light to the castle." You froze. The voice continued. "Because the road ahead?" A long pause. "Does not belong to the living." Bramblewick looked at you. Elowin looked at the tunnel. And somewhere far beyond the darkness, the Hogwarts Express began moving again, without you. The three of you were left behind, alone, inside a mountain, with a blue-white lantern, a broken compass, and something ancient walking toward you. For a few seconds, you could not move. The train was gone. Its red lights disappeared around the bend, leaving only darkness behind. You stood on the ancient stone platform with Bramblewick, Quillane, and Alawan Vera. The blue-white lantern trembled in your hand. Behind you, the tunnel was silent. Too silent. Then Bramblewick said the words none of you wanted to hear. "We have to find the train." You looked into the darkness. The train left without us. I noticed. How are we supposed to catch it? Bramblewick pointed toward the tracks. "We follow them." Alawan shook her head. "The tracks don't lead to the castle anymore." Bramblewick turned. "How do you know?" "Because they weren't built to." You stared at her. She stepped toward the edge of the platform. Beneath the tracks, ancient stone stairs descended into the mountain. You hadn't noticed them before. They were hidden beneath a curtain of black vines. The lantern's light revealed something carved into the wall. A symbol. The same symbol that had appeared on the compass. Bramblewick stared. "That's impossible." "What?" "That symbol hasn't been used in hundreds of years." Alawan touched the stone. "It wasn't supposed to be found." The mountain groaned. Dust fell from the ceiling. Then came the footsteps, far away. Slow, heavy, thud. Everyone froze. Thud. The sound came closer. Bramblewick grabbed his bag. "We're taking the stairs." You followed. The three of you descended beneath the railway. The air became colder with every step. The walls were covered with ancient carvings. Wizards riding enormous birds. Ships floating through clouds. Students walking beneath stars. And finally a picture of a train entering a mountain. But there was something strange about the final carving. The train did not come out. You stopped. "Bramblewick." He looked. His face tightened. "What?" "The train." He studied the carving, then whispered, "It never reached the other side." Elowin continued walking. "Keep moving." You hurried after her. The staircase became narrower. Eventually it opened into a vast underground chamber. You stopped at the entrance. A lake stretched across the cavern. Its surface was perfectly black. There was no reflection, no ripples, no movement, and floating in the center was a small wooden boat. Bramblewick stared at it. "You've got to be kidding." Elowen walked toward the shore. "That's our way across." "Absolutely not." "You have a better idea?" He looked behind you. The footsteps echoed again. Much closer now. Bramblewick sighed. "Fine." You climbed into the boat. It rocked beneath your weight. There were no oars, no ropes, nothing to control it. You looked at Elowen. "How does it move?" She pointed toward the lantern. "Put it at the front." You did. The instant the lantern touched the wooden floor, the boat began moving, slowly, silently. Across the black water, the cavern stretched endlessly around you. There was no wind, no birds, no sound except the soft movement of the boat. Then you noticed something beneath the surface. A pale hand. It drifted beneath the boat. You froze. Another appeared, then another. Bramblewick whispered, "Don't look down." You looked down. Hundreds of pale hands moved beneath the water. They were not swimming. They were reaching. The boat suddenly stopped. Elowen stood. "Sit down." "Why?" "Because they're awake." The water began bubbling. One hand grabbed the side of the boat, then another, then dozens. The wooden hull creaked. Bramblewick grabbed the lantern. "Do something!" "I am doing something." "You're holding a lantern." "It's the only thing keeping them from climbing aboard." A pale face rose from the water. Its eyes were closed. Its mouth opened. A whisper emerged. "Give it back." You felt cold spread through your body. "Give what back?" The face sank. Another appeared. "Give it back." Then another. "Give it back." The voices multiplied. Soon the entire cavern was whispering, "Give it back." The compass inside your suitcase began shaking violently. You pulled it out. The cracked glass suddenly repaired itself. The needle pointed toward the center of the lake. Something was beneath the surface. Something enormous. A shadow moved below the boat. Bramblewick stared. "That is not a hand." The water exploded. A massive creature rose from the lake. It had the body of a serpent, but its skin was covered in ancient silver markings. Its head rose higher than the cavern ceiling seemed to allow. Its eyes opened. They were completely white. The boat tilted. You grabbed the side. Elowen shouted, "Hold the lantern up!" You raised it. The creature stopped. It stared at the light, then slowly lowered its head. Its enormous face came within inches of the boat. You could see your own terrified reflection in its eyes. Then it spoke, not with a voice, with a thought. "You carry the lost direction." You looked at the compass. "What does that mean?" "You were never meant to find the road." The creature turned toward the darkness behind you. "The road found you." Bramblewick whispered, "What road?" The creature disappeared beneath the water. The boat began moving again, faster, much faster. The black lake rushed beneath you. The cavern walls blurred. Then suddenly, light appeared ahead. Real moonlight. You could see the mountains outside. The boat shot through a stone opening. You emerged onto a narrow underground river flowing down the mountain. The boat spun. You screamed. Bramblewick grabbed the side. Elowen laughed, actually laughed. "You're enjoying this?" "No." She smiled. "I am." The river carried you through a series of tunnels. You passed beneath waterfalls, through enormous caverns, past ruined bridges. Then the river dropped. The boat became airborne. For a moment you were flying. Then you crashed into the river below. Water exploded around you. The lantern nearly flew away. You grabbed it. Ahead, the river divided. One path glowed with warm, golden light. The other disappeared beneath a forest of black trees. Bramblewick pointed toward the golden path. "That one." Elowen shook her head. "No." "Why?" "Because that's what it wants us to choose." You looked at the dark path. "You're saying we should go into that?" "Yes." "That's your plan?" "Yes." Bramblewick sighed. I preferred the train. The boat entered the dark passage. The trees closed above you. The river became narrow. Branches scratched against your shoulders. The lantern's white flame began shrinking. Then you heard something behind you, a whistle. The same whistle from the train. You turned. Far down the river, two glowing lights appeared. Train headlights. But the train was nowhere near the tracks. It was coming through the forest, straight toward you. Bramblewick stared. That isn't possible. The train accelerated. The river shook. Trees snapped. The headlights grew brighter. Alawan grabbed your shoulder. Don't let the train touch the boat. How? She pointed at the lantern. Light the river. You lowered the lantern toward the water. The white flame touched the surface, and the entire river turned silver. The approaching train screamed. Its brakes shrieked. The headlights disappeared. The train vanished into the trees. Silence returned. You thought it was over. Then something landed behind you. The boat rocked violently. You turned. The faceless creature from the train stood on the riverbank. Its pale eyes stared directly at you. It pointed toward your suitcase. Then it spoke. This time, you heard the words clearly. 6 days ago, the journey began. Bramblewick whispered, What? The creature smiled. You have not been traveling for one night. You looked at Alawan. Her face had gone pale. The creature continued, You have been traveling for 6. Your stomach dropped. That was impossible. You had boarded the train that morning, hadn't you? Then you remembered. The strange meals, the darkness, the mountains, the tunnels, the broken clocks you had seen. You had assumed the journey had lasted hours, but perhaps you had lost days. The creature stepped closer. And you still have 3 more roads to survive. The lantern went dark, and the river disappeared beneath your feet. You fell. There was no river beneath you, no boat, no ground, only darkness. You reached for something, anything, but your fingers closed around empty air. Then your hand struck cold stone. You landed hard. For several seconds, you could not breathe. You rolled onto your back. Above you was a ceiling of tangled branches. The lantern lay beside your shoulder. Its flame was gone. Bramblewick groaned nearby. Alawan was already standing. You pushed yourself upright. Where are we? Alawan looked around. The forest. What forest? She pointed ahead. Tall black trees stretched in every direction. Their trunks were twisted. Their branches crossed above you so tightly that almost no sky could be seen. Bramblewick slowly stood. This isn't the same place. You looked behind you. There was no river, no cave entrance, no mountain, nothing. Only trees. Then you noticed something strange. The trees were moving, not swaying, moving. Their trunks slowly turned beneath the ground. Roots dragged through the soil. Branches shifted positions. The entire forest was rearranging itself. Bramblewick whispered, We need to leave before it notices us. You looked at him. The forest can notice us? He stared at the trees. I really hope I'm wrong. A branch suddenly snapped. Everyone froze. Then another. Then another. The sound traveled around you. Something was moving between the trees. You grabbed the lantern. It was still cold, dark. Alawan took the compass from your hand? The needle spun wildly. There, she pointed. A narrow path had appeared between 2 trees. You followed. The path was covered with silver leaves. Every few steps, one of the leaves whispered. Not words, memories. You heard your mother's voice. Then a teacher you had known. Then someone laughing. Voices from your own life. Bramblewick covered his ears. Don't listen. You tried not to. But then you heard your own voice. A memory. You were younger. Standing somewhere warm. Someone was telling you that magic was dangerous. You stopped walking. Alawan looked back. What did you hear? My past, she nodded. The forest feeds on memories. Bramblewick frowned. Then why does it need them? To learn how to scare us. A tree beside you suddenly bent. Its bark opened like an eye. Inside it was a perfect image of your home. Your old room, your bed, your window. Everything looked exactly as you remembered it. You stepped toward it. Bramblewick grabbed you. That's not real. But it wants you to stop. You stared at the window. Someone was standing behind it. You could not see the face, but you knew the shape. It was someone you missed. The figure raised a hand. You almost stepped forward. Then Elowin shouted, "Look at the ground!" You looked down. The silver leaves were changing. They were no longer leaves. They had become hundreds of tiny pieces of paper. Each one carried a single word, "Stay? Stay? Stay?" You backed away. The illusion vanished. The tree closed. The forest became silent again. Then the compass stopped spinning. The needle pointed toward a distant hill. Bramblewick sighed. Finally, you started walking, but the forest changed with every step. A path appeared, then disappeared. A hill moved. A tree that had been behind you suddenly stood in front of you. You began walking in circles. After what felt like an hour, you saw the same crooked tree for the fourth time. Bramblewick kicked the ground. "We're trapped." Elowin studied the compass. "No." "What?" "The forest isn't moving randomly." She looked at the trees. "It is making a maze." "For what?" She pointed ahead. "For us." A deep sound rolled through the forest, like distant thunder. Then every tree turned at once. Hundreds of trunks rotated toward you. The branches lifted, and between them, you saw something enormous, a creature taller than the trees. Its body was made of bark and roots. Its face was hidden beneath a crown of branches. Bramblewick whispered, "The warden!" The creature took one step. The ground shook. Another step. The forest trembled. Then it spoke. Its voice sounded like trees breaking in winter. "Who carries the lost compass?" You looked at Bramblewick. He looked at Elowin. Elowin pointed at you. Your stomach dropped. The warden's head turned, its empty face focused on you. You held the compass tightly. "What do you want?" The warden lowered itself. "The journey must be paid." "How?" "One memory." Bramblewick immediately stepped forward. "Take mine." The warden turned toward him. "No." "Why?" "You offer what is not yours to give." Elowin stepped forward. "Take mine." The warden remained silent. Then it looked at you. "The compass chose you." You stared at the cracked object. "What happens if I refuse?" The forest changed. The path behind you disappeared. The trees closed together. The warden answered, "You will never leave." You looked at the two people beside you. Bramblewick was frightened. Elowin was trying not to show it. You thought about the journey, the train, the tunnel, the lake, the creature, the impossible days that had disappeared. And you realized something. The compass had never been guiding you toward Hogwarts. It had been guiding you through places that wanted something from you. You lifted your head. What memory? The warden extended one enormous hand. The memory that makes you turn back. You closed your eyes. Immediately, a memory appeared. A warm room. A familiar voice. A final goodbye. A moment you had carried inside yourself for years. The kind of memory you never wanted to lose. You felt tears forming. No. The warden waited. You opened your eyes. "I won't give you that." Bramblewick stared. "You can't fight it." "I don't have to." You looked at the compass, then at the forest. "If this journey brought me here, then there must be another way." Elowin smiled faintly. "There is." The warden moved closer. "Then find it." The ground split open. The three of you fell through the roots. You screamed as darkness swallowed you again. But this time you saw something beneath the forest. A railway, ancient, broken, and stretching through the earth. Far ahead, a single red light moved along the tracks. The Hogwarts Express. It was still traveling, and somehow you were beneath it. The train thundered overhead. Then the compass began glowing. A new path opened in the darkness. You climbed toward it. Behind you, the warden's voice echoed through the roots. 4 roads remain. You stopped. 4? Elowin looked at you. The warden continued, and only one leads to the castle. The ground shook. The train whistle screamed above you. You climbed faster because now you knew the truth. You weren't simply trying to reach Hogwarts anymore. You were trying to survive a journey that seemed determined to make sure you never arrived. You climbed. Above you, the Hogwarts Express thundered through the darkness. Every few seconds, the ground trembled beneath your hands. Bramblewick Quillane climbed behind you. Alawan Vera came last. The ancient tunnel seemed endless. But finally you saw light, real sunlight, cold morning sunlight. You pulled yourself through the opening and stopped. The three of you stood on a mountain ridge. Below you stretched a vast valley covered in silver mist. Far beyond it, surrounded by mountains and hidden behind enormous pine forests, stood Hogwarts, the castle, the destination you had been trying to reach since the beginning. For a moment, nobody spoke. You had made it, almost. Then Bramblewick looked at the compass. Its purple glow had disappeared. The needle pointed directly toward the castle. "We're close." Elowin shook her head. "No." Bramblewick frowned. "What?" She looked at the valley. "This is the last road." You stared down. There was no train, no bridge, no carriage, no path, only a narrow trail winding down the mountain. It looked harmless. That frightened you more than the monsters had. You began walking. The trail descended between enormous rocks. Mist surrounded your ankles. The air was completely still. No birds, no insects, not even wind. Then you heard footsteps behind you. You turned. Nothing. You continued. The footsteps followed. Bramblewick turned next. Nothing. "Don't look back again," Elowin said. "Why?" "Because the last road doesn't like being followed." You walked faster. The mist grew thicker. Soon you could barely see Bramblewick. Then you couldn't see Elowin. You reached forward. "Elowin?" No answer. "Bramblewick?" Silence. You were alone. The trail split. 3 directions: left, right, straight ahead. The compass pointed straight. You followed it. After several minutes, you saw a figure standing in the mist. You stopped. It was Bramblewick. "Where were you?" He looked at you. "I've been waiting." You stepped closer. Something felt wrong. "What happened to Elowin?" He smiled. "She never made it." Your heart tightened. "What do you mean?" "She fell." You stared at him. "Where?" He pointed toward the cliff. You looked, then back at him. Bramblewick was still smiling, but his eyes were completely black. You stepped backward. "You aren't Bramblewick." The thing wearing his face smiled wider. "No." The mist exploded around you. You ran. You didn't know where. You only knew you had to keep moving. Behind you, the creature screamed. The voice changed. First Bramblewick, then Elowin, then your own voice. "Stop!" You kept running. The path became steeper. Rocks cut your hands. Branches scratched your face. The creature followed. Then you saw the end of the trail, a stone bridge. Beyond it, the castle. You were so close. You ran toward the bridge and stopped. A deep crack split the stone. The bridge was broken. There was a gap between you and the other side. Far below, the mountain disappeared into clouds. You couldn't jump it. Behind you came the creature. You turned. The mist opened. The faceless figure stood there. Its pale eyes stared at you. It had followed you through every stage of the journey: the train, the tunnel, the lake, the forest, the mountain, and now here. It raised one hand. "Give me the compass." You held it tightly. "No." "Give it to me." "No, you cannot cross." You looked at the broken bridge, then at the compass. Suddenly you understood. The compass had never pointed toward the safest road. It pointed toward the true road. You looked down. A tiny symbol was carved into the stone beneath your feet. The same symbol from the ancient tunnel. You placed the compass over it. The mountain shook. The broken bridge began moving. Stone slid across stone. The missing section rebuilt itself. The creature screamed, "No!" You ran. Bramblewick appeared from the mist, alive. Alawan was beside him. "Run!" All three of you crossed the bridge. The creature charged after you, but the instant you reached the other side, the bridge vanished. The creature stopped. It could not cross. The mountain became silent. Then the compass cracked. Completely. Its pieces fell from your hand. You looked down. For the first time since you had found it, there was no glow, no needle, no direction. You were free. Bramblewick looked at the castle. "We made it." Elowen smiled. "Not yet." You looked ahead. A long stone road stretched toward the gates. No monsters, no tunnels, no strange trains, just morning sunlight. You walked. Every step felt heavier than the last. Your clothes were torn. Your suitcase was damaged. Your shoes were covered in mud. You had lost track of how many days had passed. But the castle grew larger with every step. Then you heard something behind you. A train whistle. You turned. Far away, through the valley, the Hogwarts Express appeared on a distant railway. It was moving normally now. Warm lights glowed through its windows. Students were laughing. Someone waved from a carriage. You smiled. You'd spent the entire journey believing the train was supposed to carry you safely to Hogwarts. You were wrong. The train had only been the beginning. The real journey had been everything that happened after the tracks disappeared. The things that chased you, the choices you made, the memories you refused to surrender, the people you trusted, and the fear you kept walking through. You reached the enormous castle gates. They opened slowly. Golden sunlight spilled across the road. Bramblewick stepped forward. Elowen followed. You stood between them. For a moment you looked back at the mountains. They seemed peaceful now, almost innocent. But you knew better. Somewhere beneath those mountains were the tunnels, the black lake, the moving forest, the broken railway, and the road that had tried to keep you from arriving. You looked toward Hogwarts. The journey was over. Not because the castle had rescued you, but because you had survived long enough to reach it. Bramblewick smiled. Ready? You took a breath, then nodded. Together you walked through the gates, and behind you, far away in the mountains, something whispered your name one final time. But you did not turn around. You kept walking. Because sometimes the hardest part of reaching your destination is surviving everything that tries to make you turn back. And you survived the journey to Hogwarts. And now, the journey is over. The mountains are behind you. The endless tunnels are silent. The black lake has returned to stillness. The forest has stopped moving. And somewhere beneath the earth, the ancient railway has fallen quiet. You survived. Not because the journey was kind to you. It wasn't. It tested you from the very beginning. The moment you stepped through the hidden platform, the world changed. You thought you were boarding a train. Instead, you were entering a journey where nothing could be trusted. The first night taught you that lesson. The knocking at the compartment door. The faceless figure outside the window. The thing that learned your name before you even understood what it was. Then came the mountains, the impossible tunnels, the train that left its tracks, the storm guardian, that rose from the clouds, and the moment when you discovered that time itself had been hiding from you. You thought you had traveled for hours. You had traveled for days. 6 days had disappeared somewhere between the tracks and the mountains, but you kept going. Then came the Black Lake, a place where pale hands waited beneath the water, a creature older than the railway itself, a creature that told you the truth. The road had found you. You had not found the road, and still you continued. Then came the forest that moved, the trees that remembered your memories, the voices that tried to convince you to stop, the illusion of home, the temptation to turn around. That was perhaps the hardest part, because monsters are frightening. But sometimes the strongest thing trying to stop you is the memory of somewhere you desperately want to return to. You refused. You kept walking. And the journey demanded a price. It asked for the memory that could make you turn back. You refused to surrender it. That choice changed everything. The ancient warden could not force you. The road could not control you, and the compass could no longer decide where you belonged. Then came the final mountain, the last road, the broken bridge, the creature wearing familiar faces, the moment when you nearly believed your friends were gone, but you recognized the lie. You kept moving, and when you placed the compass against the ancient symbol, the bridge rebuilt itself, the road opened, and the journey finally released you. You crossed the bridge, you reached the valley, and for the first time the castle stood before you without darkness between you and it. There was no hidden tunnel, no creature, no impossible lake, no moving forest, no voice whispering from the mist. Only the morning, only the road, only the three of you walking forward. Bramblewick Quillane survived. His suitcase did not. Somewhere during the journey, one of its wheels disappeared, the handle broke, and a purple cloud permanently stained the side. He never explained what had been inside it. Alawan Vera survived too. She never told anyone how she knew so much about the journey, and she never admitted whether she had seen the faceless creature before that first night. As for you, you kept the broken compass. Not because it still worked. It didn't. The needle never moved again. The glass remained cracked. The strange purple light disappeared forever. But you kept it anyway. Because sometimes an object does not need to guide you anymore to remind you where you've been. Years later, people would tell different stories about the journey. If you enjoyed the story, hit like, subscribe, and turn on the bell so you don't miss the next part. And tell me in the comments, would you have opened that suitcase or thrown it off the train?